Let's take a minute to introduce the episode.
Yeah.
Maddie Tudor, our esteemed colleague who works with us in the marketing department, has been helping us out now for 4 years. This episode is about going viral.
Yeah, she wrote a really good newsletter about why she doesn't care if you go viral, Colin.
Yes. And I would say some of the things that I enjoyed most about this episode were why you might not want to go viral.
Yeah, why it could be bad for you.
Why it could be bad for you. Because
Yeah.
I think everybody just assumes that if you're in social media, you want to go viral. And that's not always the case.
Yeah.
And often what it takes to actually gain a good audience.
Yeah. And what's changing? Like, I think that Maddie does a really good job of breaking down what it used to mean to be on social media, to be an influencer, to be like where we've gone from point A to B to C to D to E to wherever we are right now, and how what these companies are looking for has changed. Like Instagram has changed, YouTube has changed, LinkedIn has changed, etc. So it's a really good conversation.
Very reflective.
Yeah, really enjoy it. I hope you guys enjoy it as well. And we'll get to it.
Lovely.
Welcome to the Compound Growth Podcast with Colin and Wheeler, where we talk all things growth. From financial growth to career growth, personal development to societal progress, we explore how each layer builds on the next, compounding over time to shape who we become. Each week, we break down complex ideas and emerging trends into clear, actionable insights. Because growth isn't just about numbers. It's about understanding the world and our place in it.
Well, the guest we have today is our esteemed colleague, Maddie Tudor. Welcome.
Hello.
Maddie.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys.
We're excited to have you on. It's been 3 years since we've been working together, maybe even longer now.
On and off, even a little bit longer, since like 2021.
That's amazing.
You guys took an early bet on me, which I really appreciated. And here we are, many years later.
This is what we do. We try to find good people early on and grow alongside them. So,
and hope they stick with us.
Well, I'm here for the long run. I don't know about you guys, but I'm here.
Which brings us into our topic today of getting quality leads and people alongside us.
It does.
So Maddie, the reason that we wanted to talk to you today is you wrote a newsletter where you basically said, I don't care if you go viral. And I thought that was such a cool newsletter to get from the person who was doing our marketing for us. I said, this is great. This is what we need more of, because Colin and I, along with Tori, have had a lot of conversations about what we're doing with this podcast, what our goals are, what our hopes and dreams and expectations are. And virality has not necessarily been explicitly stated, but I think it seems like it's a shortcut, like a fast forward. It's the hit the easy button and now everybody knows who you are type of mentality. And you essentially wrote a newsletter that said not so fast.
Yeah. Well, to back up a second and tell everyone who I am and what I do. I am a marketing and operations consultant, and I've been working in the digital social media world since about 2016, maybe even a little earlier. I hit that sweet spot that many millennials have where like I grew up without the internet and then with the internet, and we learned with the internet. So, it is, for a long time, it was I go viral and I hit the easy button. And so it's hard to move on from that now, but it just doesn't work that way anymore on social. And I work with small businesses, largely in the service industry, a wide variety of services, but all the same. You're looking for one-to-one client relationships. And so this fallacy we've all been sold of like, if you go viral, you'll have so many clients, is just not it. And in fact, what people are looking for, especially from you guys in the financial services industry, is trust. And building trust takes a lot longer than one really great post on social media.
So, Maddie, I can speak to that, which is we've had a few podcasts in particular that I wouldn't define as going viral, but it did very well compared to a lot of our other posts. And I know Wheeler and I were up late that night, constantly refreshing to seeing how many followers and views we were getting. Don't deny that you weren't, because you were.
I never stay up late. I value my sleep, Colin.
Do you? Anyway, so We were doing that and it felt great at the time. But to your point, like it didn't necessarily lead to much per se. Like
Yeah.
it was a lot of one-time viewers that necessarily never came back.
Right. And so there's a couple things you look at when you work in social and think about that. You think about, well, what's my funnel like? Do I need to change my conversions funnel? So what I'm saying is that when those one-time viewers come, are they subscribing or following or not because I haven't properly queued them to? In this case, I don't feel like that was the case. I feel like we'd set you guys up for success in that sense. So then the other question is, why are they coming to that one thing and what makes them actually interested in it? So the problem that a lot of people have, and like this is really prevalent, for example, on TikTok and a lot of people. I was in a chat with other social marketers today who were like, has everyone seen that views are way down on TikTok? Which they are for a number of reasons. But point being, we all have these ups and downs in social because you go viral for one thing, and if that one thing isn't the only thing you do, they're no longer interested. They liked that one piece of content. That doesn't mean that they like everything that you're making. And so I'd rather have one follower who watches all my videos at least 50% of the way through than I would have 100 followers who watch the first 5 seconds of my video, because that one follower is far more likely to convert for me down the road. They're engaged in the content, they're engaged in the community and interested in what I'm actually saying.
Yeah, I think that last part of the engagement is kind of the point for like why we've been doing this podcast, right? You know, Colin and I talked about this years ago when we were at our last firm, and we said, you know, what's great about having a podcast is the ability to broadcast what you think to people who actually care about what you think and have a reach of more than 1-to-1, right? And that's there's all these different paths I feel like you can choose from if you want to go online and start a podcast, either like a YouTube outlet or, you know, Spotify or Apple or whatever. But I think what's really hard to figure out is why you're doing it, what you're trying to achieve, and what you're trying to get from it. And the easiest thing to do is to think, well, I want to go viral. Like I just want everybody to see and think about what I see and think about and know who I am and just make it big and blah, blah, blah. And I think it's just like it's a concept that doesn't have anything really behind it. And it's actually trying to figure out why you want that and what's behind it. That's the real work and the really interesting path.
Sure. And I think a lot of the time they're at opposing ideas, a lot of the time, or opposing ends, in that the thing you want to say is not always the thing that's going to go viral. So an easy way to think about this is if you went into it and just said, I really want to grow my name, I care about volume, then I would say, great, make every single piece of content about what's hitting the news right this minute. We're going to focus everything solely on SEO. We're not going to worry about quality of content as much, and we're going to be churning. So, like hundreds of pieces of content a week to all lead to this one thing. We're going to look at a clipping agency. We're going to do XYZ. Like the list goes on to that strategy. The difference is that you guys are thinking about, well, what's the quality of what we're saying? We're talking about things that not everyone is covering. Like, you know, if you said to me, I want to go viral tomorrow, you would join the line of 10,000 other people writing about the AI bubble and stocks and that kind of stuff, which is also important, but is not necessarily what you're trying to tell people right in this minute, nor necessarily what your followers actually need.
As a business owner, Maddie, have you struggled to gain clients or to convert clients to the way that you see things right now, or do most people come to you because they want to go viral?
Quite the opposite most of the time.
Yeah.
And some of that is purposeful branding. So I am very clear, like, I'm not into the like data driven just for the heck of it, like constantly looking at dashboards. I'm not here to use all the social media jargon just because I'm here to demystify and make clear what's actually worthwhile for you to spend your time on and what's not, and then take off your plate what we think is actually valuable to the business and put it on mine. So when I come in to work with someone, it's actually quite rare that they're like, "Oh, I want to get on TikTok and go viral." It's more likely that they've come to me and they're like, "I know I need a newsletter. I know there's people on a newsletter list waiting for me that I just like haven't activated." I had a client that I started with and she was like, "I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't have time to do it." We sent we started sending monthly newsletters. Within 2 months, there was someone that came off of her list that had been sitting there dormant that converted into a client. And so it's about what's the valuable step, not what is that big step that's going to blow you up a lot of the time.
That's a really good point, because I think what you want to see is forward progress. You want to, and you want to see it in a measurable way, and like a conversion like that really helps you feel like you made progress and it's measurable. I think that sometimes people get confused. They think everything's basically, success in this space is I'm an influencer
Yeah.
or a thought leader or something along those lines. When in reality, success can just look like, one conversion or one more listener, one more customer, one more whatever.
Yeah. Well, and certainly I have clients, you guys being some of them, that I'm like, you could be a thought leader. You could go up there. The question is it worth your while to put in the time and effort to do so? I mean, influencers, that's a full-time job. Having done and still doing influencer marketing, when you think about a platform like Instagram or TikTok, they want you to post sometimes 5 times a day. That is a ton of content you're constantly creating. You're feeding a machine and feeding an algorithm that values volume in terms of content given, and then doesn't necessarily give you back that as easily. And so that's making a choice that I'm not going to work in my business anymore. And I'm not really going to work on the business. I'm just going to go into marketing in some respect. When you look at like what's an easy one? The Adam Grants of the world. The amount of time that Adam Grant probably spends making content or spending money on a team that makes his content versus the time that he spends reading research, conducting interviews, that has, I'm sure, certainly tipped. Brene Brown recently spoke about this, that she went mega viral and people started calling her America's therapist. And that's not who she wanted to be. She wanted to be a researcher, and she took an intentional step back to do that and said, I'm not going to take as much speaking. I'm not, even though I have the opportunity, I'm not going to make more TV shows. I'm not going to do this, that, and the other, because I want to do the research. And so it's a trade-off for a lot of people. The thing is, as a marketer, you will always in your life have people come to you and say, I want to go viral, or isn't going viral easy? And it is your job to either be the person that leans in and says, great, I'm going to make it happen for you, which many marketing agencies do, and good for them, or be the person who says, maybe that's not right for you, and here's why.
Something that I struggle with is, and maybe you can dispel this belief of mine, which is that if you have really great content and if you are a thought leader, then you will inevitably go viral because everybody will want to hear what you have to say. But it
Yeah.
doesn't sound like that's the case.
Well, it's certainly, I believe in the like, if you build it, they will come, right?
Right.
In that, people who are the right audience for you will eventually find you if you're optimizing your content while not losing the intention behind it, if you're doing XYZ to properly get it out there. Certainly, on some level, as a marketer, I still believe content is king and good content will rise to the top. That being said, it's all changed and we don't own these platforms anymore. And so we don't have the ability to say, well, I'm going to tweak this, that, or the other, because I know for sure that's going to make the difference. I think the difference is that if you build it, they will come. They may not be 1,000 people, they may be 100 people, but those 100 people really care about what you're saying. And that's more worthwhile anyways.
The Instagram purge of recent times,
Yeah.
2026, which was like crazy. I think it was Instagram announced that they were basically deactivating all of the inactive accounts. And then overnight, I know like Kim Kardashian lost like 10 million followers, and there were a bunch
Yep.
of other brands like Nike lost a ton of followers. And it just kind of goes to show that having followers doesn't actually mean anything if a huge chunk of them don't even exist.
Right. And most of the platforms nowadays are quite open that that is no longer what they value in terms of algorithmic priority. It's very clear that they care about engagement. And when we say engagement, we mean length of view. Are they rewinding? Things like that, which, is easiest to see in the back end of a platform like YouTube, which is why so many people, I think, are starting to flock there again. They care about engagement, and we mean like comment, like, share. Shares are more deeply valued than anything else because that does in some way trigger virality, right? The more people that share your content, the broader your audience, the wider it reaches. And then they are very clear. They care about views, and to the point that Instagram used to measure what was called reach, and they are phasing out that measurement completely. So you don't even know the impressions now that you got. An impression is when something is just shown to someone and they pass by, versus an actual view counts as they look at it for a certain amount of time. So they aren't even going to give us impressions anymore after a little while.
The if you build it, they will come is very much in alignment with some of the Rick Rubin writing that we've referenced a few times in our podcast, and the concept that art leads to commerce. Sometimes it doesn't have to be commerce for the sake of commerce, and I think sometimes that's what the influencer space is. It's really just existing. I mean, purely it exists to sell, right? That's the whole job there. When we talk about virality and like just the easy button and kind of what you were just talking about with the impressions, it's how much of this is like the algorithm and trying to get the algorithm to do the work for you versus what can you do on the ground, right? What can you do talking to other people? What can the person creating do to share their creation versus relying on some sort of algorithm to help them get in front of people?
Right. Well, that's why we see the rise of platforms like Substack, right? You own your content, you own your followers. If I wanted to leave Substack today, I could export that list and go elsewhere. But also, there is no algorithm. Now that's slowly changing on a platform like Substack, but that was their original seller, was there is no algorithm. You just follow people you like, and we'll give you more people like that. And so that's why it's valuable. I would say that overall, we're in a place where that's changing, right? So brands are starting to value, I want to work with a creator because they just create really cool content. The brands that win on social media most of the time, especially in influencer deals, lean into whatever the creator already does and embrace it in an interesting way. So you think about brands who partner with people like artists on social media and just say, make a great piece of art and integrate this one thing. That's going to get them a bigger win and a bigger following because they've done something interesting versus one more product read that you see where the influencer tries a thing and holds it up and says, look how great this is. Does that still work? Yes, it does. Will it forever? Probably not. A lot of people think about, and I follow a woman named Rachel Carton, which is what this original newsletter was inspired by, outside of being frustrated because a client came to me and said, I want to go viral. And I was like, that's not a thing anymore. I can't just press a button for you. But she wrote a really interesting piece about how the algorithm used to be linear. And now it's a line and everyone's entering at different points. So we can't market the way we used to because you have to assume they could enter at the beginning or the end of your campaign. And so how do you spread your messaging across that in a way that it doesn't matter when you come into this? All that to say, certainly there are things you can do to quote unquote optimize content. That is the job of a marketer like me, to help my clients do that and allow them to just create what they're interested in. That being said, I think that people are sick of getting the same old stuff. And so there is an opening in the market for people who are doing interesting and different things as well.
So do you think it's the case that like your job as a marketer is to kind of get people maybe to focus on more quality than quantity per se? Is that a fair
Definitely.
assessment? Yeah. So if that's the case, then how do you distill down A, what someone's really interested in and good at? And then B, like how do you communicate that out through platforms to actually start to build that quality audience?
Yeah. Most of it is spending time with my clients and getting to know them better. So when I started working with you guys, I was really zeroed in on let's get a newsletter going, let's get a newsletter going. And I've learned that you are someone, Colin, who, when you get on camera, you are so good at articulating your thoughts. Not to say you aren't Wheeler, but Wheeler likes to write. He enjoys writing. You don't find that joy as much. And so, how do you lean into that? Colin's really natural on camera, but doesn't like writing. Wheeler can kind of do both. How do we lean into that and take advantage of it? It's a game we're still playing, right? It's something we're constantly trying to figure out. I have clients where they came to me and said, I have written hundreds of pieces and have nothing to do with them. Like, I don't know what to do with this. Here you go. And so then it's a matter of just like going through that gold mine and saying, this is valuable. This isn't really appropriate right now. Let's get it out there for people to see. So it's really personal depending on each client. I have clients who like it when I help copyright for them. I have clients who want to write everything themselves. It's a personal preference in the end. I will push people in certain directions sometimes, but that doesn't mean that they can't do it on their own. I would say 3/4 of my clients, and yes, this is like a specific niche, know what they should be doing and know how they want to talk to their audience. It's a matter of having the time or someone to gather that and execute on it.
Did you say when you talk about like what, I don't know if it's the market or what the world is looking for, or what the space is looking for, but it seems like there is overall a trend. It was towards, I think, things that are authentic, but maybe now it's more about substantial, like substance, right? And
Yeah.
something that's a little bit more intentional. I have noticed that fear tends to sell better than like positive vibes.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that has always been the case, if it will always be the case, or if there's some sort of opportunity on that side of things as well to, are people thirsty for substance and something they can feel good about in a world that's full of a lot of just toxic stuff we can't feel good about?
Yeah, I would certainly agree that substance is starting to matter more, especially as everything is flooded with AI content, right? So there are a lot of creators that I even see in their comments section that someone will comment about like, oh, you messed up this thing, and people respond to them and be like, at least I know it's not AI. So people want real content from real people, right?
Yeah.
And things of substance. Fear mongering has always been the case. I mean, you think all the way back to like snake oil salesmen back in the 1800s, they're curing an ailment that isn't real, right? And so but they were able to sell because they made you scared that you were ill, that you did have that illness that didn't even exist, and that castor oil or whatever it was would fix. And so that always been, and I think to a certain extent always will be there. Something we saw during COVID certainly was a trend towards like looking for good news because everything felt so dark and scary. And so people were searching for that. There will always be an audience that is searching for that happy outlet. I follow people on TikTok that are like, here's 5 good things that happened in the news today. Or you see the 100% Happier podcast, or any number, Rainn Wilson's whole ethos online is about happiness and how can you get happier. And so I think it's there. but you have to push against a lot more noise to get out there. Since COVID has died down, we're not in lockdown. Certainly, it's significantly harder.
Why is it that every single YouTube like screen always has someone with this face? Or
That's just
like,
our content. That's just the
or just
finance
that.
world.
Like every single thing is like the market's blowing up again, or Trump's economy is tanking your bank account, or it's like there's always, like as I scroll through my YouTube or Instagram or whatever, it's always someone with that face. And
Yeah.
it is always some ridiculous caption. And then it turns out to be nothing.
Yeah.
And it's so like I've stopped clicking on it because it's just annoying at this
'Cause
point.
you know.
Because I know it's fake, but it's ridiculous.
Well, I think you proved your own point, right? You remember it. You remember that there are these things that, my God, and the thumbnail is
Right.
posed and silly. And so that's why it works. We notice it. Clickbait unfortunately works. And there's a reason that it became a tactic, because people saw if they think something scandalous or crazy or exciting is happening. I mean, that epitomizes the rise of Mr. Beast, right? All he does is just crazy things. Or even the Paul siblings, Logan, Paul,
Yeah.
that's their ethos. That's all they do. It's just do crazy stunts online. And so they saw an opening and they capitalized on it. Do I wish that there was more people watching the, really great smaller content creators? Certainly. Do I acknowledge that, you know what, for them, they figured out their niche and they went hard and they saw an opening and they took it? Totally.
I think
Appreciate that.
it's interesting to me though. Sometimes maybe it's just the outlet, right? Like the place that you're going to for your content, because there's a podcast, Diary of a CEO. Colin and I both listened to it, and we'll go on there, and it will be like, on YouTube, it will say this common diet may be feeding cancer or whatever. Or it's like AI will kill us all, and then you listen to the actual podcast, and that's not what the podcast is about. It's
Sure.
almost like a Trojan horse. It's a delivery to see. I'm pulling an Odyssey right here to keep us relevant, but it's like it sneaks you into listening or tricks you into listening to something that's not that. And I find that interesting. But I wonder is that going too far? Like if I go into a video and it says billionaires warning, I'm selling, the crash is already here, and then you go in there and that's not necessarily the message. Is it the fact that the message got across? Is that all that matters? Or should we be thinking about trying to get attention in a different way?
I have always felt that there is a level of responsibility owed to people who have large platforms online. So do I understand the tactic that he is taking? Certainly. Do I think that it's actually a very thoughtful podcast? Most of the time, yeah. I like Diary of the CEO. I don't always love the guests they get on. I think sometimes they steer into that virality, fake science skid sometimes. That being said, it's thoughtful and interesting and good content. But I do think we owe a responsibility to think more about what we put out there, especially when you have such a large audience. You have a duty of care, basically, as someone who knows that you have eyes. This is something that when I managed influencers, it was one of my almost biggest regrets was that I didn't get those talent at the time to do something with their platform that bettered the world in some way. That's not to say they didn't want to. Back then, there was a lot of fear around associating yourself with charities for a variety of reasons. Cancel culture was just starting back then, so people didn't understand it. Anyways, point being, that I brought Mr. Beast up, and I think he's a good example because he also recognized that duty of care and uses his good to raise a ton of money for charities. And so that's an example of someone who I think, not always thoughtful in what he does, but at least recognizes that he has a platform and he needs to do something bigger with it beyond sell toys. With Diary of a CEO, I think, it's Trojan horse. Let's get them to learn something by getting them in. With financial content, I have a bit of a different feeling, which is like in a world like now where people can go on their phones and trade stocks, you better make sure you don't accidentally cause a run on the market, which I don't know that his audience is that big, but it's certainly, we could, as we learned from GameStop, you can feel the impact in the market. And so you got to be thoughtful about what you put out there.
The idea of being able to influence a mass of people to think one way or create one action or another is a sense of kind of power that I haven't necessarily considered for someone in his position, like whether it's Mr. Beast or Diary of a CEO or whatever it is. Because
Yeah.
I guess in the Batman quote, like with great power comes great responsibility. Or was that Spider-Man? I can't remember. Whatever the
That is
superhero
Spider-Man.
was.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was Spider-Man, okay, but it is actually genuinely like that, and what's funny before is if you think back like 10 to 15 years ago, it was always like the newspapers and the media outlets, but now it's shifted to individual people.
Hmm. Totally. I mean, I think that they didn't think of that either when they started. They just wanted to make an interesting thing and put it out there, and it grew and became a business, and when things become a business regularly, creators suddenly find themselves with this apparatus around them, and they're like, "I wasn't setting out to be a boss, to have to run payroll, to have to pay all these people, to have to think about what I'm putting out in the world, because what if I accidentally influence something?" That's not why they started, and I'm sure most of them would say that. I mean, you think about Brittany Broski recently gave a podcast interview, and she talked about the system of doing the podcast and how they make it easy for these big name guests to come on. And she's like, "Yeah, I have multiple researchers. They are doing research for 2 to 3 weeks beforehand, and then they come out and they give me all the questions ahead of time. We've gone through it 2 or 3 times before the guest even comes into the studio. So then the guest comes in, we do the interview, we take a thumbnail, and that's it." And so there's suddenly all these people who should be marching towards that same cause and helping you protect yourself, and they aren't always necessarily, and that's when you see people run into trouble. And there's an issue, and I had this when I worked with drag performers at World of Wonder as well. They're just really good drag queens, and that's what they wanted to do, and suddenly they have an internet following, and suddenly they have to pay taxes on prize money that they didn't know about, and so they run into problems, and it's a blessing and a curse, and
Yeah.
that's what they have to deal with.
Yeah. I think some of the I've heard the criticism lobbed at the Joe Rogans of the world that they don't really prep, and then they don't control the conversation, and then they do fall short of that standard of care when they allow misinformation to be spread. And that's a really good point and something to think about. There's this artist, Maggie Rogers, if you might be familiar with her. She
I
went
love her.
viral, right? She went viral when Pharrell heard that song Alaska back in the day. And I heard her talking about it. I think it was like a 10-year anniversary video or something, or an interview. And she was talking about how, viral can be really bad, right? It's
Yeah.
literally like a virus, right? We're associating it with a negative thing. And the responsibility, the overwhelm, all the things that you're not prepared for. It's a really good point that I think you've brought up a couple of different times today. It's how much of this do you want to be your full-time job? How much of it do you want to be your everything? And it seems like if you, Colin and I have talked about this a lot over the years. We want growth, but we don't want cancerous growth. And I think sometimes that's what virality is.
Yeah. Certainly. I mean, listen, some people have been lucky and had amazing things come out of it, and that is beautiful. A lot of people don't get that opportunity. And so, it's about accepting, what do I want from this? And do I feel prepared to take on the responsibility of it? For sure.
That's something I struggle with personally with our podcasts in general is I'll say like the growth and scale of it and kind of where we want it to go. And sometimes you just kind of come and you do the podcast, then you leave and you don't think about it, and then it just becomes a routine. but what's the purpose of the routine and what exactly is it that we're trying to do? Because without a vision, it's really difficult to have direction. And that's something that I struggle with personally.
And that's true of all marketing. If you are just throwing things out there at the wall, you're going to be 10 times less effective than if you have a vision and a mission that you're driving towards. I end
Yeah.
up with clients who I come in and I say, whoa, whoa, whoa. I understand what your services are, but what is the vision? What is the mission? Where do you want to be in the future? Because there's a lot of directions we could go here, and we need to be going in the right one for what you need in the future, not right now. There's short-term and long-term priorities everywhere. And, in short term, maybe we do choose to sacrifice the long term because we need to fill a specific business need, but not always. And I would hope not regularly.
Maddie, thank you so much for taking some time to join us today and talk through all of this. Honestly, we're compound growth, just like
Yeah.
CoFi. It's about a journey, and it's about all of the things that we soak up along the way, all of our info diet, and all of the people that we associate with who are helping us through this whole process. So you've been a big help for us. We really appreciate you taking some extra time to walk through this again with us
Yeah.
today, because you're an infinite resource for us, and we really appreciate it.
Well,
Yes.
thank you. I would say likewise. I am a much more informed person because I work with you, because I've known you, but also because I listen to the podcast. And I literally was at the breakfast table this morning talking to someone who was like, so what does happen if there's a collapse? And I'm like, well, I actually could tell you. I know these things suddenly.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing it. And to echo Wheeler's point, not only do I think this is going to be helpful for our listeners, but it's also very refreshing and helpful for us to go through this again. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for your time.
Yeah. Thank you
Awesome.
guys. Happy to do it.
Thanks,
Awesome.
Maddie.
The information in this material is for general information only and is not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. Investment advice offered through Integrated Partners, doing business as CoFi Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor. Integrated Partners does not provide legal, tax, mortgage advice or services. Please consult your legal tax advisor regarding your specific situation. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. The economic forecasts set forth in this material may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that the strategies promoted will be successful.
Compound Growth with Wheeler and Colin, sponsored by CoFi Advisors. Reach out today. Yay!